I'll start out by saying how grateful I am for the musicians and the speakers so far this morning. They've been so on point for where I'm heading, which is always a gift. And has a synchronicity, has a way of bringing itself to play, particularly around here. But thank you kindly. All right, fantastic people. It's good to see you again. I'm Tracy, for those of you who don't know me. You may or may not have seen that the topic of this is called Hopepunk, Pass It On. And Hopepunk is a phrase that most of us have probably never heard of before. I hadn't. I had to go look it up. It was strange enough that it inspired me to go look it up. So despite the fact that it's not the most promising of names, at least it inspires curiosity. And it has the word hope in it, so that's a good sign. I will start out with a couple of points. First of all, this really speaks to me, but I want to be absolutely clear that, of course, there is no one true way. Take what speaks to you, step away from the rest. I also want to specifically give thanks to the first person who coined the phrase a few years ago, Alexander Rowland, who basically just came up with the phrase and said, Hopepunk, pass it on. Posted it on the internet, and that's all she said. And a couple other people who posted articles that I found very useful in helping me shape what I was thinking about things. Haley Nauman and Aja Romano. Now, why exactly have I gotten so emotionally involved in this concept that I'm actually nervous about talking about it? Partially, it's because it's very difficult to talk about, and there's a good reason. Some of the quotes about it some of the quotes are fantastic. I mean, and the summaries are great. Hopepunk says that kindness and softness doesn't equal weakness. And in this world of brutal cynicism and nihilism, being kind is a political act. But don't get the impression that Hopepunk is in any way a political movement, because it's also described as a wider cultural and storytelling trend toward optimism and positivity in the face of bleak times. Another quote was hanging on to humanity at all costs. Another was genuinely and sincerely caring about something, anything, requires bravery and strength. These were all other people's phrases about it, and included the concept that things that cat videos are definitely Hopepunk. The fact that I insist in my workplace on being a nurse leader and having sparkly cat stickers on my water bottle, and feel a need to make both of these very present to people, is very Hopepunk. The hope and the punk sort of tie that drive toward connecting softness and a softer thing than joy, comfort and caring, to something that can be, at its heart, maybe a little bit confrontational, but not in a particularly sharp-edged way. One of the summaries that I had on one of my points was that it's a battle for softness, civility, and joy, which is good, except it's not a battle, really. And I figured out several of the reasons why. First of all, it's eternal. This is not something that starts and stops. There's always going to be forces, there's always going to be nihilism and cynicism and other forces that try to sap the joy, the light, the happiness, the delight out of the world. And there's always going to be things that irrepressibly remind us. You can have gone straight from watching an episode of The Walking Dead to seeing your brand new kitten, and you probably can't keep the Walking Dead mood entirely, because some things in the world just bring that softness back. I also realized that while it's totally worth winning, but there is no winning, because it's eternal. It's not a battle. It's a life being. I realized that it's essentially another way of looking at yin yang. And right now it feels to me like we're in a part where more than half of things are on the edgier side, the less feminine side, the less civil and joy-driven side. And it most needs fighting when it at least looks like it's coming out on top. But I looked at it and I realized that we are not Joan of Arc. This is no series of campaigns and no blaze of glory. And then I thought about Mother Teresa and Martin Luther I and Martin Luther King and Maya Angelou. And those were all, they're all incredibly Hopepunk, which is fantastic. But then I realized that they're not necessarily the best examples of Hopepunk, because even more Hopepunk are adult ed teachers who are teaching people to go and cherish their hours and love their joy. Community gardeners who are going out and doing what they love and trying to bring more life into their world and into the world of people who are having difficulty finding life where they are and teaching them that it's right there at their feet. And whether what speaks to you is occasionally showing up and tossing a face full of glitter at somebody. There was a time in my life where I carried around a bubble wand and used to just sit when I was bored and just blow bubbles in public. So this is pretty deep to my soul. Whether it's cross-posting your cat videos or your adorable child photos of your own children, or whether it's teach tolerance. Don't get me wrong. Teach Tolerance and Burning Man are both Hopepunk, and they're both important. And whether you're the person who runs the first aid station at Burning Man or one of the people who's doing the performances, it's all important. Whether you're the person who just remembers in the middle of the street to look up and smile at strangers. Do it sometimes. Don't be confrontational about it. Just Gently smile at them, and you may see some amazing results. Be gentle with it, but it might work. For me, I came into this world and I chose Compassion Boot Camp. I chose a family of origin where with troubled mental health and troubles with substances and troubles with violence. And basically, I was going to come through that either with a lot of opportunity to heal, or a lot of ability to give compassion, or something else. And I'm still trying to figure out what the ones who go into that pathway and stay broken may be choosing, and if they're still choosing it. I feel sometimes hard pressed to know if I can believe that everybody walks into these lifetimes with their eyes wide open. But that's a philosophical point for a different day. I chose to be alive at a time when I would definitely see cycles. There were certainly cycles where I wasn't real hopeful about compassion and civility being on top during the repression and during the parts of the 80s where the people with, in my experience, because I was busy being in poverty at the time, the people with money kept it, and the people who didn't struggled by. But eventually things balanced out a little more, and there were people who were more willing to balance that, and now we're back to another time where it looks very much to some people out of balance. And I'm not speaking to that one way or another. But the cycles have really reinforced that this is an ongoing, it is very yin-yang. The circles over and over and over again. And they feed each other. They're part of a cycle. They need each other. And for me, I've been living my life from the Hopepunk front line, essentially. I have realized in retrospect that currently it's the nurse leader in mental health with the sparkly cat stickers. Before, when I was a hospice nurse, I used to get such looks because I would laugh in the hospice residence. I would smile. I was upbeat and positive. How some people found that at least startling, if not vaguely offensive. Whereas if you're in your last days, I will bring you joy. And nobody's going to stop me. So, and if they want to stop me, they can fire me. That's okay. And then I'll volunteer. But I've also realized that there's a spirituality to Hopepunk, and I may actually have to sit down and write this. I don't know. It turns out there isn't a whole lot written about Hopepunk yet, so I may have to write it. And for me, at least, some of it is, for me, the punk part speaks to me of of almost a necessity to stand up and step forward, not in a warrior way, but in a standing together way. And has gotten me to the point now where I feel like I want to spend some of my time figuring out what my plan is to battle direness in the world. What I'm going to do personally on a day-to-day basis when the world just seems like it's shoving darkness down my throat. What I'm going to do to feed myself softness so I don't forget it exists. And maybe for me and for those of you who have had a spirit that says, I should do something and I don't know what, maybe think in your spare time about the small wrongs that are around you on a regular basis. Nothing huge, but think of small things that you could naturally do that you don't think to do in the moment. That basically, whether it's think of the comments people make in front of you and you never think until after, 10 minutes after, that you should have just said, you know, I'd really rather you not say that in front of me. Or whatever. Basically, we all have little things like this. And it doesn't have to be, so I just want to do this for me. And I want to put the idea in people's heads that you can do this in your own private time, so when the time comes, you've got the ideas already in your head. And I realized I also wanted to see if other people possibly would like to gather every once in a while. I think I'll probably call it Standing Together. It'll probably be on Saturdays at some point. And people, if they want to talk to me about that, I'll figure out what time might work based on who's interested and available when. And there's so much. One of the things that I also liked about what I read in the things about Hopepunk was the fact that, and this is true, one of the things about Hopepunk is that it has a categorical vagueness about what it is. It's an idea come movement. Basically, it literally does its level best to not be definable. Because that's actually part of softness. It's part of the thing. So they were singing my song, and I wanted to sing a couple verses to you folks. So anyway, I hope you folks have a great week. And that's about what I had.